Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the studio. I'm so excited to be here with Fernando Rojo, who opened up our conference day 2 with an amazing talk, not about Vercel coming into mobile, but about composition.
Yeah, that's right. It's the kind of thing I've been thinking about on and off for years, every time I build with React, and I just had to get it out.
Yeah, so you might know Fernando from his work in React Native and React community with all of the amazing libraries. He was, I guess, hired by Vercel a few months ago as a head of mobile. So this is the topic that I was really expecting to see on the stage. I know that we talked in Krakow a few months ago, and I was saying to you that I hope that you will reveal something on this stage. So, I wonder what's up with that. What are your plans at Vercel for mobile space? What are your, responsibilities as head of mobile? How much you are investing in this space?
Yeah, well, mobile is becoming a more important product line for Vercel. And the big thing we're starting with is a better experience on mobile for V0. So as I mentioned at the end of the talk, and as we've been hinting at recently, we've been spending a lot of time on improving the experience of you're working, you're building something on the computer, and then you leave. And you want to find out what the AI is doing for you. You want your army of agents keeping you in the loop. You want to get notifications and get a new life to the generations you're working on. And that's where the native app for V0 is going to come in. There have been some people asking if it's going to be a PWA or something like that. They probably don't know me that well. And it definitely won't be. And so that is really the sole focus right now of mobile at Vercel, is building this app. And for things after that, we'll have to wait and see. But my hope is that we'll have a really exciting beta to share very, very soon. We already have a massively growing wait list, a lot of interest in the app. Some very early testers, and the results have been extremely promising. So we're focusing really on a simple, elegant, fast, smooth experience of using an AI product on mobile to make things.
So now the question is, was V0 for mobile built with, some kind of AI? I mean, because V0 is building apps with AI, so I would say people may expect that if Vercel is building a new, let's say, builder for mobile, was it also built with AI?
So we do, I would say that V0 is one of my key creative tools at this point. So I was always like a mostly design and code, but a little bit of Figma kind of person. And I think that V0 in particular for prototyping is very tailored to me for that reason. It's hard for me to imagine going back to building a product like this without using AI. Even when I'm on the plane and I have an idea, I always want to quickly fire up a V0 for a prototype, go back to my code editor, maybe ask Cursor to help with one thing. I have kind of my whole flow, and I just can't go without it. So yes, I would say using V0 is huge for coming up with ideas and the initial code, and in some cases, actual full flows that we use in V0. To me, it's really been kind of like the replacement of, I just have a design idea, I'm going to go spin it up on Figma or something static. And instead, I can quickly just a few prompts. Sometimes I'll spend even an hour going back and forth with it. And then I can actually send around an idea as opposed to just being a Slack thread.
So maybe you can talk a little about your workflows with AI. What do you actually use and what that workflow looks like? The interesting thing you said on the stage is that when you feed AI with those kind of presentation, use composition instead of ternaries, instead of ifs, it becomes more maintainable, more understandable code, but you have to tell it to use it that way, because if not, it's going to instead use the ternaries and all of the maybe not so maintainable that it got fed from GitHub and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, and just to clarify, obviously I know that there are conditional usages of all kinds of code, but for those who didn't see the talk, there was a very specific case of, ugly code with ternaries and a bunch of nested if statements. Yes, I think that this is actually a reason that I was drawn to working on V0 in some way, is that it's more opinionated than maybe another AI tool you might use very often. We've been trying to roll up the expertise of libraries like React, Shadcn, Tailwind, Next.js, all these really widely adopted softwares, and inject as much expertise as we can into it so anyone can have that. And so that's what I also want to continually do here, is take any patterns like this that we all agree are great outputs and continually add evals and other things we can do to improve our LLMs to do that under the hood. And this has been a fun experiment. So yeah, as you mentioned, I was feeding in slides from my talk, speaker notes, all these. I actually had a long note of this over like the last year that I've been putting together of annoyances I had in React and how I would fix them. And it's been very fun watching the AI output something that I actually can read and can jump into. And what I've found is that, first of all, I think the long variable name people won. There are a lot of little unexpected output or outcomes that I've found from AI. It loves comments, and above all, like long descriptive variable names have been very solid. And I was always kind of in that camp, kind of like Swift developers where they have these like 20-word variables. And I always liked that I could come back to something and understand it. And I found that the composition pattern also lends itself well to that, because each component simply describes what it does. And so I might have, for example, a header and then a header title and then a header title chevron, right? And you're very clearly indicating to the LLM there where the nesting is. And that's much easier than just a massive list of props where it struggles to get the hierarchy.
Yeah, and like you said in your talk, you always leave this escape hatch. If you need to put something else there, you can always do that without any prompt modification and other problems like broken memorization, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
I know you as a guy who who spent a lot of time on the boundary between mobile, React Native, and web. So when I saw you got hired as head of mobile at Vercel, I was sorry for going back to that, but like, so I'm not talking about your plans at Vercel. I understand that you cannot share this maybe publicly right now, but maybe you can tell us, what do you think about developments in that multi-platform web to mobile, mobile to web transition with React Native Web, with Strict DOM, with Export Outer working on both mobile and web, with Rock now also trying to get into that space?
Yeah. Well, if I go back to like 2021 is where my head goes with this question. That's when I first spoke at Next.js Conf. And at the time, I was basically saying, hey, I used React Native and Next.js in one code base to build a website and a mobile app. And that was, I guess, about 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years ago this upcoming month. And the reaction from everyone at the time was like, kind of, they didn't believe me. Or like, it was like, wait, are you serious? And part of the reason was I was demonstrating the like 5 or 6 libraries I'd built to make it work even semi-okay. And then the following year, at that point, I was releasing Solito. So if you fast forward to now, it's interesting, as you mentioned, like all these big players, companies, open source projects, whatever it might be, have actually converged now on the fact that this is not only possible, but a very likely way to build a good product. Is you actually can share a lot of the code between web and native, whether it's iOS, Android, and web. And I think the thing that maybe has gotten a bit lost along the way is that the focus is not just sharing code. Instead, the focus is a good product in each place. And we don't need to write it twice in every case. And so that was always like the focus and the pitch of Solito, is that each platform should implement its own screens and things like that, but the skeleton is shared. Okay, so more specifically to your question, like how do I kind of view all that? I think it's great. I think it's very satisfying to me to finally see that this idea has come to life and that other companies and people have taken them on. It reminds me of when someone, I had this styling library back in the day that I started called Dripsy. And at the time, it was the only library that worked for web and native for adding responsive designs. But now there are like 50 options for this. And there are people who have been like, oh, I didn't like this thing about Dripsy, or I didn't like that, or I like this API more, or here's a more performant option. And that's the way I view a lot of this, is I want to make things that inspire people to make things. And I think that's what's great about open source. And so now we have companies like Expo that have, since Solito's announcement and since its popularity grew, have now put much more of a focus on web. I think that's great. I think it means that Solito users or non-Solito users or whoever it might be now actually has a lot more attention on issues. And we actually care about these configuration problems that have basically plagued people that have used this stack. So all that to say, I think there's a future here. The React Strict DOM, React Native Web problem is unsolved because React Strict DOM, in my opinion, has the API is one. I much prefer web standard coming to native than the reverse. I think we saw that the reverse failed a bit. React Native going to web was an amazing project, for the record. I love React Native Web, and it'll always have a soft spot in my heart. The problem that it's been hit with is the fact that React Native's APIs are too limited, and it doesn't have enough for the web.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us and for being with us at the conference. Great talk. Thanks again, and see you at the after party.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.